So you know how when you are kind of like a in your college or high school history class, or you're just a history nerd in your own time, etc. Some incidents just kind of stick with you as either, the most tragic or the funniest or most dramatic, whatever. To me, the kind of funniest in a black comedy kind of, there's no like obviously most military history is not slapstick funny because it's human lives, but in that sort of black comedy, Blackadder kind of way, Ticket's Charge has always been loaded comedically like that for me. It's this there's so many elements between ego and reversal of fortune on so many levels, and gambling not petering out, and just the long-term momentum of the whole white supremacy isn't a strategy kind of thing. It all that stuff is very loaded for me. So I always kind of wanted to try a short story about the whole Pickish chart having somebody embedded in it. And then I thought, so Anders kind of came to me because I thought it would be, I was kind of really interested in the idea for maybe a little extra sympathy, maybe someone who wasn't a pure Confederate believer from the outset, but had recently, through just these absurd circumstances, been pulled into the cause. Like, I'm very interested in this idea of loyalty when it's sane or insane to be loyal, why we do that, why we are so drawn to things like martial honor or political prestige when they're sort of wrapped up in these ideas of, I don't know, so many things that we don't call cults basically work on cult mechanics, and that's something that's always in my head. And Anders, as he, the place he starts out in his journey is very much influenced by that. He is someone who when it comes to humor, comedy, satire, whatever, I've always kind of been a believer that you can have a lot of fun if you don't write like a pure idiot. Like to me, Anders, he's very confused, but I don't really write him as a pure idiot. To me, he is someone who kind of has this strong mechanical kind of intelligence, but is placed in this context where that is not that useful in so many ways in interpreting this whirlwind of craziness that's going on around him. And I kind of like the idea of writing from the perspective of someone who is in such a different political and spiritual world from me in where he starts and kind of has to find his way to baseline reality on his own and with the help of some people. But not all of them are as helpful as he or one would like. And it's you can kind of see there are a few aspiring voices in the novel that try to present what they see as reality to him, and they are all bent in their own way. You have your
No,
you have
please
that question?
continue. No, please continue.
You, like you have these kind of three heads. You have Tobias Gleason, who is this black playwright. He's a character I have a lot of fun with. I think that when I look at how Gleason ended up, I think a lot of there's one Vonnegut book, Mother Night, about this one playwright, and I think I had a lot of that guy sort of woodpeckering in the back of my head while I was writing him. I mean, obviously it goes in a different place, but I was thinking about playwright wartime and a lot of that sort of feeds into his character. But he is again he's kind of this union side. Well, not just union, but he's a true believer in this idea of earning your freedom. And something I play with in the book is that I think that there's something kind of incredibly bleak about the idea of your freedom being anything but something that's sort of born within you. And accepting this idea that you have to earn your freedom, you've almost kind of lost a battle already in a way. And a lot of Gleason's arc is dealing with that dissonance. And I feel like I'm spoiling my own book, whatever. And then there are, these other heads influencing him. There's Wendy Ross is kind of antagonistic throughout the arc of it, but she explains her entire perspective, and it makes sense. It makes more sense to Anders than he would like it to, and it's just ultimately almost believing is a purpose unto itself in a lot of ways in life. I find, and I try to play around with that. And then, of course, there is this overarching force of this arms dealer to both sides, Slade Jefferson, who I have a lot of fun comedically. If I were to be an egoist, I would call him almost my Milo Mindbender kind of kind of figure. He is sort of the voice of money in this whole thing. And he is kind of Call of the Void isn't the right wording for it, but the most cynical cast or perspective one can have on kind of the American perspective or American habits or ideas towards life and money. He kind of represents that void in this matter of fact, like if you want to survive, if you want to thrive, being what you are in the setting, this is one way how. And where there are things about that that are unfortunately in their own way saner than the other two, but it's still a completely bent perspective. When it comes to outlining, I definitely I don't know, I have kind of a island hopping kind of approach. Like I definitely outline sort of some of the big points and settings I want to hit, but I'm not religiously attached to it. I will let momentum, drag me adrift. The big things that I knew I wanted to hit are the very strange setting of the last third. I'm not sure how I could even describe without going directly to pure spoiler town. We can definitely do that. I definitely wanted to talk a lot about the New York draft riots, which are just this very particular event in American history and history in general. Just so many universal things, so many things particular to the moment, to the setting happening there that I then bring my own insanity into. And from the outset, I wanted to do again, that tickets charge kind of opening, where I think a lot of it was Anders take me around was where I end up going with a lot of these mock mentors and into often my muse definitely takes me to a lot of the inserts between chapters. I am very into doing it's sort of oscillating around all these found documents, found text, things like articles and articles, reviews, speeches, letters. And those to me are they have their own default intellectual or entertainment value, and I eke a lot out of them. But I think that they also just let me explore the scope of things, like widen the scope of things in a way that feels natural, but I don't have to leave necessarily the shoulder of the character that I'm perched on for too long. And I enjoy that element of I don't know, it makes things feel more flexible, but I get to still be relatively consistent. It's something that speaks a lot to me, I guess. Whenever you go into something as loaded as the Civil War, whatever your initial fixations are, almost every direction you look in, you'll find a thousand other fascinating things that are almost their own gravity well. Like you mentioned Nevada, and during the entire Civil War, that everything that we talk about in terms of Western history is still ongoing in real time. It's both factions in their own way, like the tragedy of what we are bringing to the native population, the craziness of people trying to deal with having settlements or establishing these settlements at the time, and just this active, ongoing military conflict back home, and that plays out in a thousand cynical ways, as, as, as you put it. And also just even smaller things. Like I have all these segments where he, hallucinates angels or whatnot, and that's a big part of the whole era has this giant spiritualist movement of mediums and various minor religious paraphernalia that kind of make it a fascinating epoch religiously too, and that kind of tints the way I have a lot of people talk about faith, the way I have everything from these hallucinations to just Gleason going on about deism to they obviously warfare comes with its own everyone's got their sort of pre-death spiritual thoughts to go through. I think where I ended up having some of the most fun feels like a grim way to put what happens in the chapter, but I thought a lot about Mole's spiritual perspective, and it comes across in this whole speech he gave. In this book, Mole is a character that is a escaped slave whose family is not, and it has, and his spiritual world has all the sunshine and light you might expect from going through that experience. And he describes a very particular, almost not like Levian or something, but almost like he feels at war with God. Like he is someone who like has a spiritual belief, essentially in an external spirituality, and he is not convinced it is on the human side. And I guess because I fell into all this stuff with mediums and stuff, I kind of thought about what are these different characters' relationship with God, given all these mass deaths, and I try to bring that to an interesting place.